Hello, ladies. Welcome. So, I have gotten through each chapter of the book Blackout by Candace Owens, and I wanted to come back and do a full review and share my thoughts on the book. So, there were several minutes during the reading that I had to give pause just because she said things that are simply not true. Um, and I really believe that if Miss Owens is as intelligent as she presents, in about 10 years from now, she'll look back on some of what she has said in interviews with a critical eye and wonder just what she was thinking. As a student of history with an opinion based on facts, I disagree with several of her comments, but that doesn't take away from the fact that what she says is true. Black Americans can do better, and we should not be okay with the worst of us being pushed to the forefront in the media because it only reinforces stereotypes. As Khadijah Nassif mentions in the book The Sojourner's Passport, which is one of my favorite books, I will link it below. I suggest that you get it. She says in that book, she has a chapter in that book on the black underclass, and she says in that book, if you were willing to accept the worst, I'm paraphrasing, if you are willing to accept the worst of your group as the representation of your group, then doesn't it make sense that others will do the same? So just think about that for a minute. So now let me get on to some specifics about the book. And I tried to pull out from this book things that are related to black women because my channel is for women. It's not specifically for black women, but that's what this is going to discuss since she wrote this book about black Americans. So in chapter 2, titled On Family, she slides in a comment related to welfare and black women. The comment that she slid in there says that welfare is the largest expenditure in the federal budget, more than 1 trillion yearly. So when I read that, this was one of the things that gave me pause because I'm wondering, when did the funding of welfare exceed the funding of war? Like, when did that happen? Because to my knowledge, that has never happened in the history of the United States. And I did go look in the back of the book, where she has the references or resources. And I didn't see where she noted where she got that number from. Also, just it's worth mentioning because, again, this is how stereotypes are reinforced. So it is worth mentioning that black women have never been the largest group of recipients of welfare in this country, in America. It has always been white women. Yeah, black women have never been the largest recipients of welfare. Not true. But again, reinforcing stereotypes. And a lot of people do believe that, but if you look into it, you will find out that it's simply not true. One of the other things that she mentions, she talks a little bit about the Moynihan Report written by Daniel P. Moynihan back in, I think it was 1965. And when I read that, she mentioned that in the book, it brought me back to a book that I have that I read several years ago. There's a professor of sociology at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. Her name is Katrina McDonald. I met her years ago when we were both a part of the members of the same association at JHU. She wrote a book titled Embracing Sisterhood, Class Identity in Contemporary Black Women. And in the book, she touches on the Moynihan Report also, which, yeah, it was written back in 65. And in the book, he mentions how the collapse of black marriage in America is a contributing factor to black poverty, but not the only factor. So let's just put that out there, a contributing factor. So it's just interesting to note how, Miss Owens, she also, like Professor Bell McDonald, she mentions the Moynihan Report in her book, but it seems like it's in a way to reinforce stereotypes, almost like the blame, putting the blame on black women for the breakdown of the black family, which simply is not true. I suggest that you look into the Monahan report and reading some of it at least. Ladies, I just have to say, I always believe that you should fact check. Don't believe what you hear from anyone. Look into things yourself. If you're not a student of history, if you find reading boring, go and look up professors. If you want to know about African American history, which I believe is American history, but anyway, if you want to look at, excuse me, someone who has studied Black America, find a Black American professor who has several years of research and of study, and you can go find those lectures right here on YouTube if you don't like to read. But I really do believe that it's best that you read and that you look into some of these things yourself so that you won't be misled by someone telling you truths mixed with lies or truths mixed with their opinion that's based on loose information. So yeah, and I definitely recommend Katrina McDonald's book, which if I can find it, I'll link that below also. Very good book. Again, it was Embracing Sisterhood, Class Identity in Contemporary Black Women. I think it was back in 2006 when I met her and purchased her book. So anyway, moving on. Also, when it comes to history, ladies, if you are fortunate enough to have your grandmother, great aunts who are in their 60s and above and are willing to talk to you, talk to them. Ask them what it was like for them as Black women, when they were teenagers coming into womanhood, and ask them what motherhood was like for them back in the 50s, back in the 60s, back in the 70s. Ask them what it was like for them. And I'm going to tell you that you will hear some stories, and it's likely not going to be stories of them putting out their husbands or their men and choosing welfare over the fathers of their children. What you most likely will hear is a lot of stories of Black men abandoning their families, causing the need for government aid. That's what you'll probably hear a lot of. And one thing that I'll always be grateful for is that I was able to speak to both of my grandmothers and ask them questions about what life was like for them when they were young women. And talking to them helped me to sidestep motherhood with poverty attached to it. So yeah, ladies, talk to your grandmothers, talk to your aunts. Find out what life was like for them. Ask them questions. Ask them how men were. Just ask them. Ask them what the government was doing for them. Ask them what they saw going on at that time. Because it's so easy to get swept up in what someone is saying and not necessarily understand that there is a little bit more behind the curtain than what that person may be presenting. So moving forward, I want to talk a little bit more about my comment that Miss Owens will likely look back probably in about 10 years on some of the interviews that she conducted, and she'll probably be a bit embarrassed, wondering, just what she was thinking to make the comments that she has. I watched 2 of her videos, one of her interviewing Larry Elder and one of her interviewing Dennis Prager. And she made some very obnoxious comments in one, and she spoke some untruths in another. I will link those videos below. In the video with Larry Elder, she made some false comments related to President Lyndon Johnson, in which he gently corrected her. And in the video with Mr. Dennis Prager, she made some extremely insensitive, ignorant, horrific comments related to Native Americans. Mr. Prager did not correct her, but his facial expressions and body language said it all. So, yeah, I would say if you have the time and the patience, you can go and watch those videos. And, I just have to say that after watching those interviews and reading this book, I question the sincerity of Miss Owens. Not to say that she's not making some good points, but if someone is going to step out into the public view and have such strong opinions to tilt a group of people in one way, then that person should have more than a cursory look at history, a more than a, it's just like her understanding of historical fact is really just not there. And she says herself in the interviews, I will give her that. She says that she's still learning. She's always learning. She enjoys talking to older people. She enjoys learning from them and listening to them. But my thing is, if you are in that place, then you should be a little bit more muted in what you say. If you can acknowledge that you are in a place where you're still learning and you don't know everything, because there are people who are younger than her who will take, and some people who are older than her, unfortunately, who will take what she says and run with it, especially a lot of people who are really just racist in their heart. I mean, I just have to put it out there because we do live in a country where there are still some very racist people, or prejudice. Some people don't like to use the word prejudice. I mean, racist, because it's supposed to be attached to a whole system, blah, blah, blah. Whatever you want to use, racist, prejudice, whatever. There are still very many people out there who are very prejudiced, and they're happy to be that way. So when they see someone of color, especially someone black, standing up saying these things, it just makes their heart happy, because it validates all of the hate that they have in their heart when they can have someone else stand up, and not only someone else stand up, but someone who looks like the group of people that they hate. So yeah, I would definitely say that you definitely have to be conscious of that, and you have to study for yourself. You have to research for yourself. You have to ask the right questions and not just jump on a bandwagon because you are tired of certain things, or you consider yourself divested, or all of these other words that I hear flying around. Because at the end of the day, no matter how different you think that you are, you still belong to that group. When people see you, they see that group. It's just the way that it is. And it goes, think about how you feel about other groups of people. I won't name any of them, but you have your ideas of those people because they belong to that group, and you base that based on how they look. Is it right? No, but it's human nature that's something that we do. And I know I can speak for myself and say I definitely know that I have a bias against a certain group because of how poorly they have treated me. But because I acknowledge that I have that bias, I'm able to deal with it, and I'm able to deal with them as individuals instead of throwing them all in the trash and saying, you know what, these people are this, that, and the other. So, with that being said, yeah, I do think that the book is still a good read. I think that you should read it. If you don't want to buy it, maybe when you can get it a little bit later from the library, and just read it for yourself. Because I mean, I can separate message from a person, and her message still is very valid. That Black Americans, yes, can definitely do better. We can do better as a collective. We can. I'm not going to take that message away from her just because I disagree with some of the things that she says in her presentation of her ideas. It just is what it is. I believe it. I know it. I know that Black Americans can do better. And I will say it this way. Oftentimes it's said in the Christian church, you separate the meat from the bones. I've heard that thrown around often when something happens with a Black pastor, when he's caught doing something that he shouldn't be doing. But the people don't want to separate from him, so they will separate the man from the message. So that's my recommendation, my advice is that you separate the woman from the message. And the message truly, plainly is that Black Americans can do better, and that whether that come from you choosing to be a conservative or a Democrat, I'm neither. I've always been middle of the road, and I'm going to stay middle of the road probably for the entirety of my life because, like I said in my other videos, I just believe that helps with critical thinking. And when you are without critical thinking, you will be easily swayed by emotions and wrapped up and swept away in all kinds of things. So with that being said, I do recommend that you should read the book, ladies. If you are a Black woman, you should read this book, because there is lots of information in the book. She did write about her background, which will help you to understand who she is as a person and how she came to be where she is today. She talks about her family a bit, which again, that's a part of her background, but she makes some good points of about a lot of things that are thought provoking. So yeah, I do recommend getting the book and reading it. And I just wanted to come back and give a quick review. I didn't want this to be too long, but in my first video, I kind of just went through the chapters of what was in the book because I had just gotten it and I hadn't had the opportunity to read completely through it. But now that I have gone through it, here I am back giving my full review. So leave me a comment and let me know what you think. Alrighty, thank you.